You're listening to the HawgBeat Hour with Andrew Hutchinson, Alex Trader, and Mason Choate on ESPN Arkansas and HitThatLine.com. Now, here's your host, Mason Choate.
Welcome into the HawgBeat Hour. I'm your host, Mason Choate. We're joined by Andrew Hutchinson and Alex Trader. Today's episode is brought to you by CJ's Butcher Boy Burgers, the best burgers in Northwest Arkansas and the state of Arkansas. Probably the best burgers in the entire world. So go get some. They have a location in Fayetteville and a location in Russellville. You definitely want to get some, especially if you're coming up for a basketball game. Anything going on here in Fayetteville or in Russellville, stop by in Russellville as well. Guys, news of the week, biggest news. We kind of saw it coming, but Treylon Burks opts out of the Outback Bowl. He puts his name into the NFL draft. I don't think any of us are surprised. And I think the reaction on Twitter for the most part was good. I only saw one or two people who were like, that's selfish. Why would he do that? But for the most part, everybody understands that this was a business decision for Treylon Burks, Hutch.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely something you could understand. I mean, personally, I was a little bit surprised that he is not playing in the bowl game, but that's not necessarily that he's not playing because he's a top prospect, but just knowing Treylon Burks and how much he loves this Arkansas team. I know in his statement that he said, you know, it came after a lot of thought and prayer. And I could imagine that this was a really tough decision for him because I know he loves this team. He loves this state, and it probably kills him that he's not playing. However, if you sit back and look at it, you take off your rose-colored glasses, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars that could be at stake. And if he goes out there, and he's been playing hurt all year for one thing. And if he goes out there against Penn State and gets hurt, then that could make him slide down the draft board and cost him a lot of money. And I don't think anyone wants to see that. I mean, he's an Arkansas kid who could have gone anywhere else in the country to play college football, but chose to stay home, played at Arkansas. He dealt with the end of the Chad Morris era. He could have easily left after that, but he still stuck around and has enjoyed an incredible career. And for my money, he's the best wide receiver in school history. And I think Arkansas fans need to just appreciate, you know, what we got to see of him.
Yeah, he's one of those players that I've kind of told people, like, I'm going to look back on this one day and be like, tell my grandchildren or whatever that I got to watch Treylon Burks play. And heck, I might be saying he's probably the greatest Razorback I've ever watched with my own eyes, because realistically, I was a little too young to appreciate Darren McFadden. So Treylon Burks, with my eyes, he's probably the best Razorback I've ever watched. So I appreciate what he did. And you mentioned the draft boards. And Alex, I feel like I ask you this question every single time we record, but I've seen him mocked towards the back half of the first round. I think it was NBC Sports maybe had him going 11. Kind of where do you see Treylon going in the NFL draft?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of the back half, and I think that's probably where I would put him if I was making a mock draft, just because there is, you know, something could happen with Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson in that Rose Bowl game, or you could have some changes, and maybe the combine brings out some new information that teams are going to go, oh, hey, this is a guy we need right now. But I think I've maintained it all year that Treylon Burks is probably the third best receiver in the country, and I think I'll stand by that. In with a class where, hey, maybe the quarterbacks aren't as deep as we thought they were going to be coming in, you could see more receivers off the board. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him to slip into that middle first round, but I'm not seeing like a top 10 pick anywhere.
Before we talk about the impact of Burks' opt-out on the bowl game, let's also hit the news that Vito Calvaruso, kickoff specialist, best kickoff guy in college football, is transferring from Arkansas. You got to think it probably has to do with Cam Little, has to do with Vito probably wants to kick field goals also. Hutch, do you know anything more about that situation? Do you think that that's probably why he's transferring?
Yeah, that's basically what I was told exactly, is that he wants to go somewhere that he can kick field goals. And I think we all know that that's not going to happen at Arkansas. Cam Little has secured that job and probably going to be named to the SEC all-freshman team that comes out on Thursday, today, if you're listening on the radio. So he's been phenomenal. But Vito, you say the best kickoff specialist in the country. That's not just your opinion. I mean, that is based in fact. I mean, I think he's fifth in the country in terms of touchback rate. And then Pro Football Focus, which factors in all sorts of other things like hang time and things like that. They actually have him graded as the number one kickoff guy in the country. So it's no small loss for Arkansas. People kind of laugh like, oh, well, whatever, all he does is kick off. Well, there's something to, making the other team start at the 25-yard line every single time. We've seen what bad special teams can do to a team. And, it just takes one guy returning it, 90 plus yards to completely change a game. So it is a loss for Arkansas. Obviously not as big of a loss as Treylon Burks, but it is something worth discussing, and going to be interesting to see. Hopefully next time we talk to Sam Pittman, I plan to ask him about it. And, I would assume Cam Little will take over that role, and he's got a strong leg capable of making 50-plus yard field goals. So maybe he can fill in there and there not be much drop-off.
Yeah, Vito was one of those guys on the roster where he was just like unanimously loved by everybody. Nobody really complained about Vito Calvaruso. So, yes, he kicked off, and that's just not what people are going to be thinking is flashy like a quarterback position, but it's important. He was good at it, and you're losing a really good player. But you're also lucky you have Cam Little there. It's not like Treylon Burks, and then there's a big drop off, at least on the current roster, from what Treylon Burks was. So let's talk about that. So Burks won't be playing in the Outback Bowl. So Hutch, I've seen the question posed, but who's going to lead the Hogs in receiving in the Outback Bowl? Maybe they just run the ball 50 times.
Yeah, if they could run the ball effectively, I think they would much prefer that to be what they do. Kind of like the Texas game earlier in the season, where Sam Pittman made the comment like, well, if we're going to average 7 yards a carry, we're not going to throw it a single time. And maybe that's the route they go if they could be effective against Penn State's defense. Now, as far as who they're going to throw it to, I mean, you've still got the two super seniors, Tyson Morris and Davion Warren. Davion Warren had a pretty good performance there in the Missouri game. Maybe he could parlay that into another good performance in the bowl game. Tyson Morris flashed early in the season, as a potential deep threat. So maybe he's a guy. We've seen Warren Thompson flash. If he can clean up the drops a little bit, then he could be the guy. He's a former top 100 recruit, a guy with all the potential in the world, looks the part. Then you've got Keytron Jackson, who would probably be my pick, or maybe the one that I would hope. If you're an Arkansas fan, if you want to see one guy kind of step up in the bowl game in the receiver room, he would probably be the guy you pick, because he's a true freshman. He really didn't do much, productivity as far as receiving and stuff like that. He played a bunch, so he's got the experience. And he ended the year with a really nice performance against Missouri. He hauled in, I think, a 39-yard catch along the sideline for a critical first down. It was a third and long. He caught it, and Arkansas ended up scoring on that drive and really kind of helped them pull away from Missouri. That's the kind of play that you want to see, and maybe that could be something he springboards into the bowl game, which would then springboard him into 2022.
Alex, you're probably the resident Big Ten expert. You know more about Penn State than I would say Hutch or myself do, at least at this point. So is there a specific receiver, or maybe you see Arkansas running the ball, but how do you think Arkansas will be able to capitalize on the Penn State defense in the Outback Bowl?
Yeah, I think it's going to be important to run the ball. And that's no matter who you're playing, just because of how big Treylon Burks was in this offense. Hutch would say it all the time, hey, if I was calling this game, I'd probably just give it to Treylon Burks a couple times. And that's just because he is so explosive and he's able to do so much with the ball. But I think, the four-headed monster at running back's really been a staple all year as well. You've got Dom Johnson, Rocket Sanders, Trelon Smith, AJ Green. Those guys are going to be able to go in and give different looks to Penn State that maybe, they did see some of the best backs in the country, Kenneth Walker, Travion Henderson. They went up against Michigan's duo of backs. But it's just tough to be constantly, if you're able to get those 3-4 yards per carry, to be run at and keep rebounding. And I think, like Hutch said, that's going to set up that, hey, maybe we can find Keytron Jackson deep. Hey, maybe we can get some of those other guys involved and just get some confidence in this room going into the next season.
Now, before we wrap this first segment up, Hutch, you kind of alluded to it earlier. You talked about how Treylon Burks is probably the greatest wide receiver in school history, in your opinion. He might not get it at least as far as like stats and records go, because that freshman year with Chad Morris, but maybe if he has another year, he probably breaks all the wide receiver records in school history. But Hutch, just kind of talk about why you say that. Why do you think he is the best wide receiver in school history?
Well, I mean, let's start with the stats. I mean, I think he ended up 6th in school history in terms of receptions and receiving yards, and he did that in 3 years, even without factoring in that his freshman year was led by the incompetence that was Chad Morris. He still ranks 6th in 3 years. You just have an average year next year as a senior, which everyone that ranks ahead of him played 4 years. If he just has an average year, he shatters those records. So, I mean, he is easily, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in school history from a statistical perspective. And then just look at him. He's 6'3", 225. He wears, 5XL gloves. The dude just catches anything you throw it to him. You throw up a 50-50 ball, and it's not a 50-50 ball when Treylon Burks is involved. It's more like, I don't know, 70-30 at least. So, to me, for my money, if I'm starting a team with all the Razorback legends throughout the years, he is my first wide receiver off the board, and he probably goes pretty high because he has just been phenomenal. Plus, throw in the fact that he's from Arkansas and that he could have gone anywhere, and you add all that extra stuff. I think he's going to be beloved by Arkansas fans for years to come, and he's probably going to have a really nice NFL career if I had to guess.
Yeah, I'm so excited to draft him for my fantasy team next year. But you talked about those 5X gloves, and I just want to like give people an image in their head. If you get like a piece of copy paper, maybe you're listening to this at work right now. If you get a piece of copy paper and you put your hand at the bottom of it, Treylon Burks' hand goes all the way up to the top and extends out like past the side of the paper if you have it like long ways. That's how big his hands are, because I talked to somebody who's actually done that with his hand, and his hands are that big. So that is just crazy. And he has all of the measurables. I heard that if he goes and runs like a 4.340 at the combine, then he's just going to shoot up in the draft, kind of like John Ross did a couple years ago. But moving forward, Arkansas lands a big commitment from one of the Oklahoma guys that are transferring out, and number 1 wide receiver recruit in 2019. It's a big deal. We'll talk about that moving forward here on the HawgBeat Hour.
You're listening to the HawgBeat Hour with Andrew Hutchinson, Alex Trader, and Mason Choate on ESPN Arkansas and HitThatLine.com.
All right, we're back here on the HawgBeat Hour, presented by CJ's Butcher Boy Burgers, the best burgers in the world. I'm just going to start saying that, the best burgers in the world. That's what they are. Location in Fayetteville, in Russellville. Not only are the burgers amazing, the fries are amazing. And not only are the fries amazing, the milkshakes are amazing. Everything at CJ's is amazing. This segment, we're going to be talking recruiting. Arkansas gets a huge commitment from Jaden Hazelwood from Oklahoma, a huge visit weekend last weekend. And we're going to talk with Hutch about that. We're going to talk with Alex Trader, the recruiting expert at HawgBeat.com. If there was a 30 for 30 under 30 list for recruiting experts, Alex Trader would be on that list. So, Alex, just talk about what you know about Jaden Hazelwood, because that's the big news right now.
Yeah, this is a huge pickup for Arkansas. He former 5-star guy. You see, this is where the portal can really come in handy, and having a guy of that caliber come to Arkansas maybe opens the floodgates. You're hoping, if you're trying to see, hey, here's where Sam Pittman's going to be able to take advantage. He's a great receiver, led Oklahoma in receptions and touchdowns, was behind Marvin Mims by quite a bit in yardage, but was able to kind of be that guy that's, hey, all reliable, get him the ball, and he's gonna make plays for us. And I think that's going to be something big, especially there's a difference. This receiver class that Arkansas is bringing in is very impressive, and we'll talk about it, has a chance to get more impressive over the next week. But looking at it as is, it's still a group of freshman receivers. Having that experience coming in and being able to say, hey, here's a guy where when it comes down to it, he's been there, we're able to get the ball to him and trust him. I think that's a huge, huge pickup for the offense.
And then Sam Mbake out of Georgia, he moved his announcement date up. Alex, I know that you've put in a future cast for him. How do you feel about his announcement? Where do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I'm more that it's hard not to feel more confident when a kid moves up his announcement date after an official visit. You know, in terms of tier lists, it's probably committing on the visit, and then that would be a close, maybe second or third. But I think that Mbake at this point is looking a lot like Arkansas. You had James Jointer saying, "Hey, it's going to be an early Christmas." Just a lot of smoke coming out of that, and there tends to be a saying about smoke and fire.
Hutch, there were a lot of other official visits. There's some coming up, and then the early signing period starts next week. So there's just some other players out there that Arkansas is targeting. I know there's some LSU guys, maybe some more Oklahoma guys. Just fill us in on that.
Yeah, one of the other official visitors this past weekend was LaTerrence Welch. He's a 4-star cornerback from Lafayette, Louisiana. He's currently committed to LSU. However, based on everything I've been told, that was all hinging on Corey Raymond, the defensive backs coach at LSU, being retained by Brian Kelly. News comes out on Wednesday that is not going to happen, that he is heading to Florida to go be on Billy Napier's staff. However, while that may seem to give Arkansas a leg up on LSU, now you've got to worry about Florida because not only is Corey Raymond, a really big guy for Welch, but he's also got a really good connection with Billy Napier, which makes sense considering Napier was the head coach at Louisiana Lafayette. That's his hometown. They've got a good connection there, Louisiana guy. So to me, it's going to come down to Arkansas or Florida for Welch. But that would be a massive pickup for Arkansas. One guy that really wasn't even on the radar based on everything I've been following until this month. So that would be a massive pickup for Sam Carter. Welch has talked about that being, he's the reason he's even considering Arkansas, Sam Carter. So that would be big. And then the other visitor they had over the weekend was an unofficial visitor, is Gentry Williams. That's because he took his official visit to Fayetteville over the summer. Oklahoma obviously had its coaching change. So he was kind of, maybe exploring his options. At this point, I would be pretty surprised if Gentry decides to come to Arkansas because Oklahoma did go hire Brent Venables, a defensive-minded coach. And honestly, if we're really looking at this without a rose-colored glasses on, who would you? I mean, you would want to go play for a defensive-minded coach like Brent Venables, especially whenever it's your home state. He probably grew up cheering for the Sooners, so that would be disappointing for Arkansas. But the fact that they were even in the race for him, a top 100 guy, that is significant and shows you how good of a recruiter Sam Carter is, considering all the other guys he already has on board. So those were the two big ones. I mean, James Joyner and Amarian Harris, they were in town. You mentioned here's a little quick tidbit. We've been calling him Sam Mbake. Apparently the M is silent. Apparently it's just Sam Mbake. Learned that over the weekend. So but still that would be a big pickup, as Alex said. Like Alex is feeling, I do feel confident that he will be committing to Arkansas on December 15th. But again, it's recruiting. You never know what could happen over the next 5 or 6 days.
Hutch, I want to ask you, we talked last segment about Treylon Burks and the impact of him not playing in the Outback Bowl. And I want to go back to Jaden Hazelwood. Do you think that Hazelwood is the guy that's going to fill in for Treylon Burks next year? I know it's early, and then Arkansas brings in Isaiah Satania out of Fayetteville. I think I saw a stat yesterday that Satania led the entire country in receiving yards. Do you think either one of those guys, I'm not going to say they're going to be Treylon Burks, but either one of those guys can fill in for the number one receiver role next year?
If any of them do it, it's probably going to be Hazelwood, just because he does have the experience of playing in college. He's been in college for 3 years. He's produced at the college level. He didn't put up the monster numbers you'd probably expect from a number one receiver in the class at Oklahoma, but he did have decent numbers. So if anyone's going to do it, I would say it'd be him, or maybe maybe a Keytron Jackson or a Warren Thompson. I mean, people forget, I mentioned it already, Warren Thompson was a top 100 recruit whenever he signed with Florida State. Keytron Jackson was a top 200 recruit. You've got Isaiah Satania and Quincy McAdoo, another 4-star in-state kid who's coming into the class. So I would imagine that Satinia and McAdoo, they'll probably have a chance to contribute, but I would be very surprised if they come in and immediately make the impact that maybe even a Treylon Burks had as a true freshman. I would expect if somebody's going to fill in and be that number one guy, you got to hope it's Hazelwood or one of the guys you already have on campus.
Alex, I know that you've kind of done a deep dive recently about the kind of the not exactly fallout, but what's going on in Oklahoma with the hiring of Brent Venables. Does that how does that affect things, and maybe some things that were leaning towards Arkansas's way, kind of with Gentry Williams, like Hutch talked about earlier? Are there things that maybe might not be going Arkansas's way anymore now that they have Brent Venables in Oklahoma?
I think Williams is probably the one out of that group that you're looking at that was potentially looking at Arkansas. I mean, when I started working on that, it was, oh, Hazelwood is looking, he might flip, he might transfer. And then that happens, and it's like, well, okay, you have Gentry Williams, who at this point, like Hutch said, not necessarily looking great. Brett Venables was the right guy to get if you're trying to keep defensive guys in the locker room. But also just there's so many recruits that are going, and a lot of them are following the guy they committed to. They're following Lincoln Riley to USC, or they're going to be, those transfers are going to be going out west as well for the most part. It's just, there's a lot of moving parts, and none of them really click for Arkansas. The one guy that I'm looking at that had Arkansas in his final schools list and would be a big pickup would be Luke Hasz. But you also have two tight ends already committed in that class, and Jaden Hammond, Shamar Easter. That's 2023. Hasz is probably a guy you take if he wants to come, just because he is that talented and he does have that kind of top recruit mentality for the position. But that would be the one that I'm looking at that, you know, hey, this is a guy Sam Pittman might want to keep talking to, might want to be able to keep in his head and keep fresh in his mind.
Now, before we wrap up recruiting, I kind of mentioned earlier, but next Wednesday, December 15th, early signing period opens up. The class is currently number 12 on Rivals.com. Hutch, I want to ask you, we know the coaches, they've been hitting it hard on the recruiting trail since after the Missouri game. Do you see them, like any crazy movement from number 12 once early signing period opens up?
You're probably going to see Arkansas move down in the rankings, and that's just because Arkansas already has the majority of its class already done. I mean, yes, you could add a Sam Bakke, you could add a LaTerrence Welch, and those guys would help as far as, you know, Arkansas's recruiting points total, which is how we calculate the rankings. But you're also going to see a bunch of teams, like, for example, Clemson, I believe, is a couple of spots behind Arkansas, and they only have like 11 commitments, and they're probably going to add more. And this is Clemson. Yes, they had a down year, but you're probably going to have a bunch of 4-stars that are currently undecided are going to announce, and they're going to land some of those guys, and they're going to move ahead. And you're probably going to see, if you're Arkansas, you want to end up in the top 20. That would be kind of the benchmark for the Razorbacks of a really good class. I believe that 2019 class that had Burks and Jefferson and Catalon, those guys, I think that ended up around 20th. I'd have to go back and check. But that is a benchmark of a good class. Top 25 should be the goal every year. Top 20 is a really good year. And I think Arkansas, as it stands right now, if they can keep everything intact as it is and possibly add another guy or two, then they could end up in that top 20 range, which should be celebrated.
All right, well, that's going to do it for recruiting here on the HawgBeat Hour. Up next, we're going to talk about the Outback Bowl. Arkansas is going to play Penn State on New Year's Day, and then we'll talk some Razorback basketball. They dropped in the AP poll, and we'll kind of break that down here on the HawgBeat Hour.
You're listening to the HawgBeat Hour with Andrew Hutchinson, Alex Trader, and Mason Choate on ESPN Arkansas and HitThatLine.com.
All right, we're back here on the HawgBeat Hour. We're talking bowl game and all SEC selections this segment. So Arkansas selected to the Outback Bowl. A lot of people say the Outback Bowl is not as good as the Citrus Bowl. I really don't think it matters because Arkansas is playing a good team in Penn State. They both kind of have like a same path this year, sort of, because like both of them were both top 10 teams at one point in the season, and now they're sitting and they're just kind of average. But Arkansas is going to play Penn State. They've never played Penn State before. First bowl game in Florida since 2006. That was a Capital One Bowl against Wisconsin. They lost 17-14, I believe, in that one. Okay, Hutch is shaking his head. I was right. So Arkansas 0-4 all time versus Big Ten in bowl games. Hutch, just kind of talk about Arkansas being selected to the Outback Bowl and why the Outback Bowl technically is not better than the Citrus Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, technically the Citrus Bowl has like the top pick. Like they get to choose whichever SEC team that's left after the college football playoff and the New Year's Six Bowls. So like after the Sugar Bowl, after the Peach, the Cotton, all that kind of stuff, they get the first pick. Apparently they picked Kentucky, which technically Kentucky is 9-3 and 5-3 in SEC play. So technically they have a better record than Arkansas. I think anybody who can look at it objectively would tell you Arkansas is probably a better team. Arkansas probably would have gone at least 9-3, if not 10-2 against that schedule that Kentucky had. But alas, like you said, it really doesn't matter. These are all very comparable. I mean, even throw in the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville. All three of these bowls are very similar in most fans' eyes and kind of have similar prestige. I think we can all agree they're better than the Liberty Bowl. They're better than the Texas Bowl, the Music City Bowl. So yeah, Arkansas is in a very good bowl against a prestigious, team out of the Big Ten that has a lot of history. They've never played them before. So I think Arkansas fans, and as you said, the last time Arkansas was in a Florida Bowl, I was in 7th grade. Y'all were probably, barely even born. I don't even know. So yeah, it's an exciting time for Arkansas fans, and it's a trip that I'm looking forward to make personally, because all my bowl trips so far have been to Houston, Texas, and Memphis. So I haven't really gotten to make. Well, I did go to Charlotte for the Belk Bowl. Arkansas fans would probably like to forget that game, but this is going to be a really cool trip, and I know I'm really looking forward to it, and I know there's a lot of excitement in the fan base as well.
I mean, realistically, would you rather play in Raymond James Stadium where they played the Super Bowl last year, or would you rather play in Camping World Stadium in Orlando? I think you would rather play in a real NFL stadium that is in Tampa, Florida, and not Orlando. I know Orlando is like growing, but Hutch, you just went on vacation to Orlando anyway, so it's good. It's a good situation for you. Penn State, though, let's talk about Penn State, and we'll bring in Alex Trader, the resident Big Ten expert. Only because he's an Ohio State fan. I want to quickly mention that Ohio State lost to Michigan, so they're 10-2 on the year, did not make the college football playoff. Penn State 7-5, Alex, and they had a up and down season, 4 losses to top 15 teams. Technically, they broke the college football record for longest overtime in history, but we'll talk to Hutch about that one later because I know he has strong opinions. So, Alex, just tell us a little bit about Penn State.
Yeah, this is a good football team. It's not going to be a pushover win. It's not like Florida out there playing UCF, which might not be as easy of a win as you would think. But this is going to be a really good game. It's making a lot of people's top bowls to watch list, like games they're keeping an eye on, and I think there's a good reason for that. Penn State really good defensively. I believe they're 36th in the country, maybe, but offensively just 80th, the 80th percentile, I guess. Not great, not really going to blow you out of the water. Sean Clifford at quarterback really hasn't been the answer for this team. He's able to come in and have a big game here and then, but consistency wise and just overall talent, I think it's going to, if Sean Clifford beats you, that's a way you're willing to go because there's so much talent on the rest of this team. Jahan Dotson at receiver is a really, really special guy. I guess you'd call him their Treylon Burks, even though maybe the impact hasn't been quite the same. I think he does have that top tier talent of the country. But this just, it'll be a kind of meh game to watch. It'll be slower. It won't be that shootout mentality that you're looking at in a lot of the games across the country. There's just not that type of firepower on Penn State side. Now, without Treylon Burks, really on Arkansas side either, you're not going to be able to have that constant deep threat to look out for on the defensive side of the ball.
You talked about earlier in the episode that Arkansas would have to run the ball more to be successful against Penn State. I'm just curious what you think the keys for Arkansas to win, here early. They haven't started bowl practice, but the keys for Arkansas to win and maybe what Penn State has to do against the Arkansas defense to win.
Yeah, I think you have to run the ball. I mean, this is a team that gave up 350 yards rushing to Illinois. And Illinois, you have a little bit of a similarity in the offense there. Just a couple of years ago, you were looking at that same offense. And I think it would be one to, hey, maybe get back to it a little bit, because this team, it is pretty solid passing. Held Ohio State to 305 yards, had a pretty bad game against Maryland, but, was able to keep teams under 200 yards throughout a lot of the year, especially under 250. KJ is probably not going to have a great game here. There's a really great safety, fifth-year senior Jaquan Brisker for Penn State that's had himself quite a year, was able to get on the first team All Big Ten team. But I think running the ball at the heart of that defensive line, they're missing PJ Mustipher, who's one of their best players, got hurt in that game against Iowa. It's really going to come down to, I think game planning is going to be a big part of it. And then also defensively, you just have to hold. This isn't a team that can match a track meet. They're not going to be able to come out and just score and score and score and score. So if you're able to set that tone early, maybe Kendall Briles throws in some of those trick plays that he loves doing so much, able to just catch them off guard, get them on their heels. I think this is a game that Arkansas maybe not runs away with, but would be able to get up. Hey, we're up 14. Hey, we're up 20 points here in the third quarter. And this is a game that Penn State's just not going to be able to win.
All right, well, moving on from the bowl game, because we'll talk more about that here in the next few episodes. All SEC teams. So Arkansas gets 3 players: Treylon Burks and Monteric Brown, first team; Bumper Pool, second team. Hutch, just your reaction on that, and maybe some players that you think got snubbed from the All SEC teams.
Yeah, and then the AP All SEC teams came out as well, and they had Burks first team, and then Stromberg and Poole on the second team. And in between those two, I think the coaches got it right. I think that obviously Burks is first team All SEC wide receiver. I was glad that both organizations decided to do that. I think he was 4th in the SEC in receiving yards. So I was a little bit worried that they might just look at those stats and everything, but he did it on far fewer receptions. He was just an explosive guy. So they got it right with Burks. Bumper Pool, he has had a fantastic year. Even though he's only started 1 game, he's played a ton because they've got that 3-man rotation for 2 spots on the field with Grant and Hayden. And Bumper has been phenomenal. Last year, he racked up a bunch of tackles, but he didn't necessarily play well, if that makes sense, because he missed a lot of tackles. And you could tell he wasn't playing at a high level, and turns out that's because he's playing with broken ribs. And I would imagine it's hard to tackle people in SEC play, especially with broken ribs. And he's been phenomenal. And I think he's definitely deserving of that recognition. Hard to argue with the 3 guys that were ahead of him on the first team at linebacker, because you've got, Nakobe Dean from Georgia. I think he won one of those Nagurski trophies, or one of those big time trophies. Bakersville from LSU, having seen him in person in Death Valley, that dude is a really good player, definitely deserving of first team All SEC. And of course, there's Will Anderson, who's been talked about as a potential Heisman candidate. Didn't get invited to the New York, but he was a guy that probably got some votes. So that's a pretty good group. Monteric Brown tied for the SEC lead in interceptions. I would have put him on the first team. The coaches did. The AP left him completely off the first and second team. So if you want to complain about something, I would complain about the AP leaving him completely off the first and second team All SEC teams. I don't understand that. I think he was definitely deserving of at least a second team nod. So it was good to see him get a first team nod from the coaches. And Ricky Stromberg, getting that second team nod from the AP, I think that's okay. I think that's good. I didn't necessarily have an issue with them leaving him off of the coaches' All SEC teams. The 2 guys they selected, the guy from Kentucky, the guy from Missouri, both those guys have been phenomenal centers this year, graded out really well. Those are the 2 highest graded centers on Pro Football Focus in the SEC. So no real complaints there. I really think they did mostly a good job, especially the coaches this year, of picking the All SEC teams.
Alex, do you have anything to go off of that? Maybe anybody that you think should have been on either of the teams? You're shaking your head no, but go ahead.
No, I think Hutch did a pretty good job of looking at what there was to offer for those SEC teams. You know, it's these lists always come with people from one group saying, "Oh, this should have been on there," and people from another saying, "No, they got it right." And I think, like Hutch said, if there's one where, hey, maybe you would have liked to see him jump on the list, and then generally it's pretty good, I'd say that's a win-win for everyone.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Up next, we're going to talk basketball, round out the HawgBeat Hour, talking about the Razorback basketball team dropped 2 spots in the AP poll. They're still 9-0, but some of it has been prettier than the others. So we'll talk about that here on the HawgBeat Hour.
You're listening to the HawgBeat Hour with Andrew Hutchinson, Alex Trader, and Mason Choate on ESPN Arkansas and HitThatLine.com.
All right, we're back here on the HawgBeat Hour. We're going to talk some Razorback basketball this segment. But before we do that, we're brought to you by CJ's Butcher Boy Burgers. I've talked about how they're the best burgers in the world. Hutch, you want to give your CJ's testimonial here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, before CJ's ever came to Fayetteville, they've got that Russellville location, and going down to Little Rock for Arkansas games, for whatever sport it may be, or just traveling down to see my grandparents in Little Rock. CJ's was always a really good stopping point. So whenever I found out that they were going to be bringing up a location to Fayetteville, I was super pumped, and it's a great spot to go grab a bite to eat. In fact, there's a very good chance I will be eating CJ's for lunch today because I have an appointment and it's going to be right on my way. So great spot to stop and eat. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it in Mason's background. You can see the beautiful fries and burger. It's making me hungry, and hopefully it will make you hungry and inspire you to go stop by CJ's and enjoy a good burger and fries.
And don't forget to vote them best burger and fries of Northwest Arkansas. Voting is open through December 22nd. You can vote once a day. And I mean, like, you need to vote them because they are the best burger and fries, and nobody comes close. So CJ's, they have locations in Fayetteville on Weddington and Russellville on Arkansas Avenue. If you need any more information on them, just go to HawgBeat.com because their ads are everywhere on HawgBeat.com because we love CJ's. And check out all of our content on HawgBeat as well. So Razorback basketball, they beat Little Rock on Saturday, and then they beat Charlotte on Tuesday. Let's start with the Little Rock game. It was another one of those games where Arkansas starts slow in the first half, and then they pull away in the second half. The player of the game, probably Audice Tony. Jalen Williams did his thing like always. Hutch, just your takeaways from the Little Rock game.
Yeah, this one was actually slightly a little bit different because it was close for most of the first half, and then they really pulled away at the end of the first half and had a 15-point lead at halftime. And you're starting to think, okay, maybe this is finally going to be that 30, 35-point blowout that we've been waiting on. Granted, we got to see that against UCA, but you're like, okay, they're going to pull away. Little Rock, they were down to, I want to say, 6 healthy scholarship players. They have been just ravaged by injuries, and it just didn't happen. It was a stalemate in the second half. They scored the exact same points as Little Rock after halftime. Just a frustrating second half for Arkansas. And yeah, I mean, it was really a balanced scoring attack in that game. If I remember correctly, I think Audice Tony, Devo Davis, they had about the same, JD Note, of course. So you like to see that kind of balanced scoring because that means you've got, there's not just one guy that opposing teams can focus in on. But yeah, it was just a really frustrating performance that, considering all the depth issues, I think Little Rock only played 7 guys, and one of them must have been a walk-on based on what I was told. And you couldn't beat them by more than 15. I mean, it was a little bit frustrating, but I know that I came away and really impressed with Darrell Walker's squad. They're coached by Darrell Walker, the former Razorback guy, played in the NBA. So I was very impressed with the scrappiness of his team. And if they can get healthy, they were without their best player and their third leading scorer as well. So if they can get healthy, maybe they can make some noise in the Sun Belt and make that win a little bit more impressive for Arkansas on the resume.
It seems like that was another one of those games where Au'Diese Toney, most of his production came in one half of the game. I think he had 16 of his 18 points in the first half. What do you think it is about that, Hutch? I know Coach Musselman has talked about it's almost like he'll be out on the court and he's just not adding anything. But why do you think it's just like one half he's great and then the other half he's not?
It's really baffling because in the UCA game right before that, it was the second half, and he scored like 16 or 14 or something like that. And then he comes out, dominates the first half against Little Rock, and think, okay, maybe he's flipped the switch and he's going to be just as dominant player. And they just didn't really get as much in the second half. And I think part of it is that Toney is not like a JD Note or a Chris Likes or a Mason Jones or someone like that or a Moses Moody who you're going to draw up plays and you're going to try to find ways to get the ball in his hands and make him, let him do whatever it is that he does. Toney is a guy who gets his action based on, he's going to go crash the offensive boards. He's going to go grab rebounds and get putbacks. He's going to cut hard to the basket and just happen to get it in the flow of the things. And when you're just really relying on that and you don't have really set offenses designed for you, you're probably going to go through some scoring droughts like what we've seen from him. So I think that's probably the reason behind it. And, there's games where, for example, against Charlotte, he didn't really do much at all. I think he scored like 7 points. And it's just a matter of which games the rebounds are finding his hands and which games he's really able to find creases in the defense and cut to the basket and get easy buckets, because that's what he thrives on offensively.
Yeah, you mentioned JD Note, and it was he kind of had an opposite performance of Au'Diese against Little Rock, because Au'Diese goes for 16 in the first half, 2 in the second half. JD had 2 in the first half, 16 in the second half. It felt kind of more like last year with JD Note, where in the second half he starts to heat up and he's like your go-to scorer. And he did what we've seen from JD Note there in the second half against Little Rock. But throughout the first half, I remember saying to some people I was sitting by, this just like, what's up with JD Note? Where's he at? It just felt like he wasn't even on the court. And we thought he was going to be Arkansas's go-to scorer this year. Do you think he still is that, Hutch? Or kind of what do you think is going on with JD Note?
Yeah, I mean, Eric Musselman even said it after the game that he was not really pleased with JD Note's performance. Even though he scored 18 points, he was not happy with the fact that he only had 1 rebound. He had some turnovers. And, yeah, he just seemed to be off. It was almost as if, like, I always think back to, like, Space Jam, where, the basketball players lose their talents. And you're like, well, what's going on here? And he did have that really good spurt. I think it was about a 3-minute stretch where he scored like 9 points. And yes, I still think he's going to be a go-to scorer for Arkansas. His 3-point shot right now is just not falling. He is just in an absolutely abysmal 7-game stretch where I don't even know if he's shooting 20% from 3-point range. It's just not falling for him. Yet he's still consistently scoring in double figures. He's getting up, upper teens. I think he's had a couple of games where he's eclipsed 20 points, and he's doing it because he's just elite at getting to the basket. He is so good at cutting for one and teammates finding him. Jalen Williams is an incredible passer. I think they've hooked up a couple of times. And then he's also just really good at getting to the basket off the dribble, and he can finish really well, and he can get to the free throw line and knock down free throws. So he's still going to be a guy that scores a lot for you. I think we're going to see him put up some big time numbers this year. And he's still doing it, even though he's not shooting well at all from beyond the arc. He's still shooting above 50% from the field most nights. So he's still really efficient once you get inside that 3-point arc. And if he can get those 3-point shots to start falling, then watch out. You could be looking at a guy who puts up just incredible numbers, and you're talking about possibly in the SEC Player of the Year conversation, but that's going to require him knocking down some 3-pointers, I think.
So Arkansas got the win 93-78 over Little Rock Darrell Walker's squad. And then Tuesday night, they beat Charlotte 86-66. And speaking of Note had a double-double, 23 points, 10 rebounds. I think he found a shot a little bit more against them. But Jalen Williams, 15 points, 8 rebounds. And it really feels like Devontae Davis is just back. Devo Davis. I mean, people talked throughout the early parts of the season, like, where's the Devo that we were expecting this year? And it's almost like, well, he started making layups and doing what he did last year, and now he's back to the player that we were expecting. So it seems like ever since he talked about putting a smile on his face, he's just been awesome, Hutch.
Yeah, and that's great to see because he is one of those high energy guys that you can kind of feed off of them and helps the team in more than just what shows up in the box score. And so that's good to see. And yeah, he's been scoring a lot better. I think he's hit, in the last 3 games he scored 16, 16, and 18. So that's really nice. And plus he's starting to really distribute the ball a lot better. He had 7 assists against Little Rock. That was a career high. And then he comes out and has 8 against Charlotte. Now, he did have 5 turnovers in the Charlotte game. He had 0 against Little Rock. 5 turnovers is too high for a guy if you're going to be running point guard. But part of that was because his teammates weren't ready for passes. Eric Musselman talked about that. I think he got called for a couple of offensive fouls, which those go down as turnovers. So his passing really was good for the most part. And that's something really encouraging to see because early on, like what you were saying, it seemed like he was being kind of forced in that point guard role, and it really wasn't working. I'm still not 100% convinced that it's going to work, but I'm starting to come around to it, and it feels like he's getting more comfortable, and that might be his role moving forward.
Like I mentioned, Jalen Williams, 15 points, 8 rebounds. Alex, I want to ask you, I mean, the importance of having Jalen Williams on the court. I mean, what can you say about this dude? He might be the MVP of the team so far.
Yeah, it's massive. There's always those hustle plays. You're always seeing him, diving for loose balls, able to go and really just put out that effort. And when you have a leader of your team like that, he hasn't been consistently dominant throughout the early part of the season, but you're always seeing that same effort from him. And that's a huge thing with the leaders of your team, to be able to lead by example and show guys, hey, if it's not my night, it's going to be one of yours, and I'm going to help that happen. And when he gets everything clicking, you're able to see, he's going to come in and be a real problem for other teams to deal with.
Off the bench, Chris Likes has just been really good this year. He had 13 against Charlotte. Hutch, how amazing is it for Arkansas to have an elite scorer like Chris Likes to come off the bench?
It reminds me a lot of how JD Note, what his role was last year, coming off the bench and providing that scoring spark. And he's had some tough games. I can't remember which game it was. There's one game where he went 0 for 7 from the floor, didn't score a single point, and just had a horrible game. And Eric Musselman said something along those lines afterwards and said, he's got to be better. And he's done pretty well the last few games. I can't remember his exact scoring totals, but he's been in double figures. But the biggest thing from this Charlotte game with Chris Likes was how well he did defensively. That has been a major point of emphasis for Eric Musselman, is getting him to where he can, play defense. And he's probably a guy that hasn't been asked to play defense like he's been asked to this year in his career. And he actually, was part of the reason Arkansas was able to shut down Charlotte's leading scorer. I think their leading scorer finished maybe with 10 points or something like that, but he did on 4 of 14 shooting, didn't make a 3-pointer, had some turnovers, didn't really have very many assists. And that was in large part due to not only Devo Davis and JD Note, who we all know are elite defenders, but Chris Likes was even on him for several possessions. And Eric Musselman said it was by far his best game defensively in an Arkansas uniform. And if he can continue that, then that's going to keep him on the court more and give him more minutes, even if it is off the bench, and could lead to really good things for Arkansas.
Stanley Amude played, 9 minutes and 54 seconds. He was 0 for 6 shooting, no points. Where is Stanley Amude, the guy that we were expecting to be a very, very elite scorer this year?
Man, it's baffling, huh? I mean, he was a guy that was one of the top scorers in college basketball last year. Granted, that was against, what conference are they in? I can't remember which conference. The same conference as Oral Roberts, all those teams, but at South Dakota. But he is a very good scorer. We've seen it some. There's been flashes where he has big scoring nights. He had a couple of back-to-back games, maybe against Little Rock and UCA or something. where he had some really good scoring nights. But then there's been nights like what you just mentioned. He only played 9 minutes and didn't shoot worth a darn. And so it's going to be interesting to see how he, if he can get consistent. That's the big thing with him, is getting consistent. We've seen it in spurts. Now can he put back-to-back games like we see with some other guys? Because that's going to be a massive thing for Arkansas, because he's going to be a go-to guy, and he hasn't been that yet.
So we've seen that it kind of like with Umude, Arkansas has not been able to establish exactly who they want off the bench. We know Chris Likes, but it's like you have Jalen Williams, JD Note, Devo Davis, Audis Toney, and Chris Likes. But after that, it's just kind of up in the air of who else is going to contribute. A guy that a lot of people really wanted to contribute going into this season was Jackson Robinson. And Alex, this guy, I mean, he's known for being a three-point shooter, and he hasn't really been making very many threes. So what do you need from him? I know you need threes, but it's just like he's not even there sometimes.
Yeah, and he had that really good game last week where he was able to go out and kind of light it up, and in a limited sample size was able to give you kind of a glimpse of what you were talking about, of being able to go in and be that microwave off the bench. I think in terms of three-point shooting right now, this team just doesn't have it falling. Nothing is really working. 28.5% shooting from the three-point line. That's 322nd in Division I out of 358. That's not going to cut it for a team that has, national championship aspirations for sure, but realistically, Final Four, Elite Eight, Sweet 16, if you're not able to hit those threes, that's where you get into trouble when it comes time for March Madness, because these smaller teams are able to come in and hit those threes. So you don't have to come out and shoot 50% or 40% or even really like high 30s. You need to be able to just be a threat from the three-point line. And right now we're not really seeing that from the entire team. And I think as that comes with the team, then, guys like Jackson or those other scorers are going to be able to put, I don't know, whatever's going on mentally or whatever's going on just as a team, and put that behind them and be able to go up and say with confidence, hey, if I shoot this, I'm going to make it. And I think that will just come with time at this point.
Real quick, Hutch, Arkansas plays Oklahoma this weekend. The non-conference schedule has been pretty soft so far, but Oklahoma, it's a big name. What kind of team are they, though?
Yeah, I mean, it's a quadrant one opportunity for Arkansas potentially. They're just outside of the top 50 range in the net rankings. That would make it a quad one win, but it's a solid ball club. They just lost to Butler in overtime. That's not exactly a bad loss. I think they lost to Utah State. That's a quality team out in the Mountain West. So it's going to be a tough challenge for Arkansas. I would say maybe their toughest challenge. They're very similar as far as talent level or whatever as Cincinnati. Porter Mosier's their head coach, so I think it's going to be a tough challenge for Arkansas. It should probably tell us more about Arkansas than these games against Little Rock and Charlotte and those kind of teams.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us here on the HawgBeat Hour. I've been Mason Choate. He's been Andrew Hutchinson, and he's been Alex Trader. Thank you guys for joining us here on the HawgBeat Hour.